Hello there, you're tuned into Eye on Africa. I'm Rochelle Ferguson-Biahi. These are the top stories on the continent. At least 2 people are shot dead in Kenya as unrest over Thursday's presidential rerun continues. The Electoral Commission says turnout was lower than 34%. Funding a lifestyle of fast cars and pricey properties, a French court hands the son of Equatorial Guinea's president a 3-year suspended sentence and a fine for embezzling millions in public money. And concerns grow in the Indian Ocean island of Mauritius, where residents fear the tourism industry is taking over. Many are fed up of new hotel complexes sprouting up. We begin in Kenya, where police say at least 2 people have been shot dead amid continued unrest over Thursday's presidential rerun. Police and opposition supporters clashed in the capital, Nairobi, and also to the west of the country. Supporters of opposition leader Raila Odinga boycotted Thursday's vote. Kenya's election commission says turnout was less than 34%. A short time ago, I spoke to our correspondent Julia Steers in Nairobi.
We heard from the chairman of the Electoral Commission late this evening, and he said that the voting that was supposed to happen tomorrow in these 4 western counties, which are typically opposition strongholds, has to be delayed to a later date. He did not specify what that date will be, but he did say that this was because of threats to the Electoral Commission. He said that his staff simply couldn't get to the polling stations safely, that already yesterday they were under serious threats of violence. And of course, throughout the day today, we saw those opposition supporters back in the streets. They were already setting up blockades to prevent people from getting to the polling stations tomorrow, as they did yesterday during the vote. So out of a total of about 40,000 polling stations here in Kenya, about 3,600, slightly more than 3,600, were entirely unable to open, largely because of this unrest that we saw in certain Kenyan cities yesterday. And it remains to be seen when the Electoral Commission will be able to hold that voting in the coming days, as the unrest is still ongoing.
A French court has handed the son of Equatorial Guinea's president a 3-year suspended sentence and a suspended fine of €30 million for corruption. Teodorin Obiang was found guilty of embezzlement to fund a lavish lifestyle of fast cars and expensive properties. His assets in France will now be seized. Obiang, who was tried in absentia, has denied the charges. His lawyers accuse France of interfering in Equatorial Guinea's domestic affairs.
Found guilty of misusing taxpayers' money back home to pay for a luxury lifestyle in Paris, Teodorin Obiang's lawyer has 10 days to decide whether to appeal.
It's a decision driven by activism, but it's not one that surprises us. Of course, we will look into the details of it and consider possible ways to appeal.
The vice president of Equatorial Guinea received a 3-year suspended prison sentence and a suspended fine of €30 million. He didn't attend the trial in person and denies wrongdoing. The French judges ruled to permanently confiscate his assets. They were seized by police in 2011 and 2012. That includes these cars. Anti-corruption NGOs which worked on the case say the French judge's decision is historic.
This is not the kind of justice that you can get inside Equatorial Guinea. These are the people, the same people that in Equatorial Guinea own palaces, own mansions, with money from the state.
The next step for NGOs like Transparency is to try to work out a way of changing legislation here in France so that the assets that have been confiscated from Teodorin Obiang actually find their way back to the people of Equatorial Guinea. Of course, it's a difficult situation because it doesn't make much sense to confiscate assets and then send them back to the state of Equatorial Guinea, because Teodorin Obiang is the vice president of that state and his father is the president.
2 South African farmers have been sentenced to more than a decade behind bars, each for forcing a man into a coffin. The defendants were found guilty of attempted murder and kidnapping in August. Theo Jackson will serve 14 years, while William Oosthuizen will serve 11. A 20-second video of the men pushing victim inside the coffin was widely circulated on social media. The case sparked outrage in South Africa.
What we want is for these men to be sentenced accordingly, so that we can stop protesting, because what they did was painful to us. We're not fighting each other. For us, it's the same. Whether you're black or white, we want the law to be fair.
Burundi has become the first ever country to withdraw from the International Criminal Court. The pullout comes exactly a year after Bujumbura notified the UN that it was quitting the War Crimes Tribunal. Burundi accuses the ICC of only targeting African countries. ICC officials say a preliminary probe launched last year into possible crimes against humanity will still go ahead. The UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has wrapped up a 4-day visit to the Central African Republic with a trip to the symbolic PK5 district in the capital, Bangui. Well, the Muslim enclave's been a hotbed of violence in recent years, but is now relatively quiet. Muslims are now free to leave the area and Christians can likewise return. The UN mission, though, is still being criticised. Our correspondent sent us this report.
Central Africans have been seeing these tanks and these two letters for 3 years now. Despite UN peacekeepers' robust mandate to protect civilians, the situation has never been quite so explosive. In the surrounding provinces, killings continue and hundreds of thousands of displaced residents live in camps. Yet here in the PK5 district, the former Muslim enclave of the capital Bangui, things are slowly improving.
I am Muslim, he's a Christian, and we get along very well.
A year ago, Trumsia would not have been able to be seen with a Christian or even leave the neighborhood for that matter.
Before there were problems, many even. But now there is nothing at all. We are safe and we can go anywhere. There is no problem at all.
For years, there's been daily violence between rival neighborhoods and signs of previous tensions between Christians and Muslims remain visible. Part of the Muslim population is still angry. Elsewhere, these members of a PK5 self-defense group and their self-appointed general say they no longer rely on the blue helmets to protect their neighborhoods.
We are the ones providing 24-hour protection. We do not agree with the security. Before the violence, we managed to live together with our Christian brothers, but this is the work of the MINUSCA.
It's for that reason the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres visited the PK5 district this Friday amid plans to better support residents.
The most important is to note that in PK5 it was possible for Christians and Muslims to come together, to make peace, to avoid all forms of confrontation, and to start rebuilding one of the most important areas of the city, the economic center of the city.
A welcome calm in the district, but Guterres is facing increasing pressure to overhaul the role of UN peacekeepers in the region.
In Mauritius, there are increasing concerns that the tourism industry is slowly taking over the island. A record 1.3 million visited Mauritius last year. That's the equivalent of the current population. Well, many residents say they've had enough of new hotel complexes sprouting up. Our correspondent sent us this report.
A barrier to protect the beach from coastal erosion put up by this five-star hotel has angered residents who say it's encroaching on public space. But this isn't the only thing disturbing residents.
I can see that they dredged the sand there, to fill here, to enlarge the beach, I think.
This fisherman says the dredging's killed off seaweed and molluscs. Residents of Bos de Flac have protested to reclaim their public spaces, but say their voices are not being heard. Despite taking legal action, the works continue. The Hotel Saint-Gérand has been in business for 42 years and is a pillar of the tourism industry. The hotel says it respects the country's environmental laws.
The government doesn't issue a permit without the right reason, and they really look at every single component of it.
Disputes like this are common on the island. Hotels are encroaching on public beaches more and more, like here in Flic-en-Flac. 3 kilometres of white sands are taken up by 6 hotels. Mauritius's tourism industry represents more than €1 billion of income, 8% of its GDP, 40,000 jobs and 120 hotels. But at what cost?
There are hotels that are located in areas where there are some rocks, which are natural. They removed the rocks to create white sand beaches just to make the beach more beautiful. In fact, it's too much makeup for the bride, so it's not a real bride in the end.
1.3 million tourists visited the island last year, a record number equal to the population of Mauritius. The island country is targeting 4 million tourists. 8 hotel projects were approved this year.
Wherever we can build hotels, we will do it, but public beaches will remain public. Development doesn't stop, progress doesn't stop, and success doesn't stop.
To boost tourism, Mauritius is offering more and more thrilling excursions, a world away from the pace and authenticity of real life on this paradise island.
There you have it. You're up to date with the news on the African continent. Up next, we have more international headlines. Stay tuned. You're watching France 24.